Good evening. Again, thank you all for your patience and being so understanding of the situation. We really respect your time and we appreciate you all for understanding again. My name is Candace Maynard, and this evening I'll be presiding for this auspicious occasion. To commence our program, we will first have a welcome by Hernandez Stroud, who is president of the Black Law Student Association at Washington D.C. School of Law.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nearly 2 centuries ago, after these words were first scribed on a declaration that secured the promise of this nation's democracy, Dr. King inspired millions with his dream. But before there was Memphis and the mountaintop, before there was the bridge in Selma and the March on Washington, before Birmingham and the loss of those 4 little girls, there was King, the young preacher, and a people who found themselves suffering under a yoke of oppression. Dr. King shared his vision with the world, a vision that offered the promise of a constitution that had at its very core the answers to our greatest national sins: equal justice under the law. Dr. King assured his fellow citizens that his goals were within reach, so long as we kept faith in one another. Dr. King urged people not to drink from the cup of bitterness, but to reach across the racial divide, because he said, we cannot walk alone. Their destiny is tied up with our destiny. Their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. He encouraged the victims of racial violence to meet white Americans with an outstretched hand, not a clenched fist, and in so doing to prove the redeeming power of unearned suffering. And then he dreamed of an America where all citizens would sit together at the table of brotherhood, where little white boys and girls and little black boys and girls would hold hands across the color line, where people would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. We have no doubt come a long way along the path that Dr. King envisioned for us. Many black and brown people have walked from poverty to the middle class with the help of better schools and access to college. Many young people can see leaders in business, arts, the sports, who look like them and imagine things for themselves that were unthinkable a generation ago. Because Dr. King taught us that a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, the struggles of women, the poor, ethnic minorities, immigrants, the disabled, the LGBT community, and even those locked up and locked out of society have taken their rightful place alongside the struggles of African Americans. But the companion message of King Day is that there is still more work to do. King declared that unity is the great need of the hour, the great need of this hour as well. Not because it sounds good or because it makes us feel good, but because it's the only way we can overcome the essential deficit that exists in this country. I'm not talking about the trade deficit, I'm not talking about the budget deficit, although we should probably look at those. I'm talking about a moral deficit, I'm talking about an empathy deficit, I'm talking about an inability to recognize ourselves in one another. To understand that fundamental belief that we are our brother's keeper, that we are our sister's keeper, and that, in the words of Dr. King, we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny. This seems so elementary, but 50 years since that historic speech, it seems so hard to put into practice. It's hard to imagine that the powerful in our society would tolerate the flourishing prison industrial complex if they imagine that the black men, that the Latino men that are being imprisoned were something like their own sons. It's hard to imagine that the powerful in our society would tolerate schools that don't teach, that are chronically underfunded, that are chronically understaffed, that are chronically underinspired, if they believe that those kids deserve to have a shot at life just like their own kids. It's hard to believe that we would have senior citizens in this country confronted with the choice of paying the rent and buying the prescription drugs they need if they imagine those seniors were something like their parents. So we've got a deficit to close. And Ms. Brazile helped to close this deficit when she worked for several advocacy groups in Washington and was instrumental in the successful campaign to make King Day a federal holiday. At the same time, some commentators have pondered why we here at Washington and Lee University have yet to officially recognize King Day, one of the most important days in American history. Some folks have questioned how Virginia, as the only state in the nation as such, can celebrate the Confederate forces on Lee Jackson Day and then 2 days later celebrate the very ideals that those forces opposed. Some people have even inquired why Ms. Brazile, an African-American woman, is speaking about the lessons of Dr. King in the sanctuary of a man whose inescapable truth was leading a war that perpetuated slavery. General Lee did not lead the state because he necessarily loved slavery. General Lee led the state because he lacked the moral fortitude to stand up for justice and to stand up against the overwhelming social environment and public opinion of his time. Lee surrendered not to Grant, but Lee surrendered to the moral deficit of his time. But if we're honest with ourselves, we'll all acknowledge that none of us have always been true to Dr. King's vision for a beloved community. Each of us carries with us the task of changing our hearts and changing our minds. Surely, if Dr. King could love his jailer, then we can work together to eliminate the bias in our prison, in our criminal justice system, to fix our schools so that they work for every child and to protect the least of us. If Dr. King can forgive those who set dogs and fire hoses upon the victims of racial turbulence, then we can even overcome the gulf between a white man waving a Confederate flag on Lee Jackson Day and a black inner city youth reciting the I Have a Dream speech in a high poverty classroom on King Day. So like Lee in 1861, we stand at the crossroads of history. We must answer the call of justice and have the necessary courage to stand up to the moral challenges of our time. Unity is the great need of this hour. So it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, rich or poor, gay or straight, Christian or non-believer, able or disabled, we must work together as our generation's task to stand shoulder to shoulder, to work together, and to bend that long arc of the moral universe towards justice as one people, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honor of the hour, our honoree of the hour, and our guest speaker, Ms. Donna Brazile. Thank you. At this time, we will have an opening selection of Lift Every Voice and Sing by a senior at Washington D.C. University, Sarah Jean Vallon. Please stand as she sings Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Hello, everyone. I will be leading this song, so I welcome you to sing along. Just wanted to emphasize that point. Okay. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Second verse. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we meet Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
As you all may know, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. At this time, we will have a special tribute to Dr. King by Anton Reed, a senior at Washington D.C. University, and a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, the Xi Delta chapter.
My name is Anton Reed, and I'm a 22-year-old student here at Washington and Lee. I was born in Bethesda, Maryland on January 10th, 1992. I tell you my birthday because Dr. King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, 23 years before I was born. I have never met Dr. King, and I've never attended one of his speeches. I've never had the opportunity to do so. All that I know of Dr. King is derived from some finite knowledge of his speeches and stories of how he has touched the lives of people around me. So as I thought of what I would say today and how inadequate I am to give such an honorary speech, I did something I do often when reading the Bible to give myself context. What I do is I try to put myself in the situation that's being described. I imagine the scenery. I try to think of what it would be like to have witnessed the events firsthand. And as I tried to imagine my 22-year-old self in Dr. King's shoes, I never much got past that point. If you resist the temptation to romanticize his life, you probably wouldn't envy Dr. King for it. When I tried to imagine it, the first thing I thought of was what it would have been like to have been hated. Not by one person or even a few people, but hated by scores of people, people I'd never met, people who didn't even know me. I imagine having to wake up every day knowing that I'd be continually questioned by people who desired that physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional harm befell me. What if, as I went about my daily life, my peers here at Washington and Lee regularly attacked me, hurled insults at me, threatened me, spent their lives and their time watching me, hoping I would make a mistake so that they could have me thrown out of this campus or into a jail cell? How many days could I endure that? The answer is 2 for anyone who was wondering. 2 days before I go from calm and relatively well-adjusted to dejected and miserable. I imagine not just their hatred, but living in what amounted to a war zone. It's not that all of America was in some constant state of tumult at the time, but if you're standing in Dr. King's shoes, it basically was. Everywhere he walked was thrown into chaos. What if your rallies are met with rock-throwing men and women spewing vitriolic language, children who should be innocent, who pour the hatred that was sowed into them out on you? What if dogs attacked your supporters and fire hoses sprayed hundreds of gallons of water at your people? What if tens, hundreds, thousands are arrested in just another day's work? At this point, I would have already been done. I could not have endured that. Absolutely not. I could still feel the bitterness as I just imagine it talking here with you all. But we're not done yet, because that wasn't all he had to endure. I think about my closest friends, my roommates, my family, my 2 sisters, and my mother. What if when I opened my mailbox, I saw letters with threats aimed at all of the people I love dearest in this world? What if I read these threats knowing that many of them were very serious and very real present dangers? What if I read these threats knowing that my home had already been firebombed while I was away on a speaking engagement, capable of helping my family? That my loved ones were being placed directly in harm's way because of my decision to stand for what I believed was right. If any of you are under the impression that Dr. King didn't have these thoughts, that he was too high and mighty to be bothered by these things, you're mistaken. He can say it much better than I can, so I'll read you just a short portion of his letter from a Birmingham jail. Perhaps it is easy for those of you who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim, When you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brothers and sisters. When you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society. When you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that has just been advertised on television. When your first name becomes nigger, your middle name becomes boy, however old you are, and your last name becomes John. And your wife and mother are never given the respected title Mrs. When you are harried by day and haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro living constantly on tiptoe status, never quite knowing what to expect next, and are plagued with inner fears and outer resentments. When you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. That was heavy, I know, and I'm sorry for that. Today is a day to celebrate the life of Dr. King, and so I was hesitant to even spend that much time thinking about some of the negativity that surrounded his life. But at least for me, it's only possible to truly appreciate all that he did when I try to understand the magnitude of his actions in terms that are relevant to me. I can conceptualize what it means to be arrested 29 times. I can sort of conceptualize what it would have been like to have lived less than 40 years of age and still died with the heart of a 60-year-old man from living under continual stress. I can even sort of conceptualize how someone would hate me so much they'd be willing to gun me down in cold blood for my beliefs. I can't ever fully understand these things, but I can at least start to come up with ideas that address the basic concepts we're dealing with. And when I take the time to try and understand, I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that he gave more for his mission than I can imagine the best version of myself doing on my best version's best day. Dr. King once said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy." And that's one thing to stand in front of crowds and say that as they cheer at your clever use of language, and it's completely different to live your life in a perpetual state of challenge and controversy and continue to stand on your principles of peaceful yet revolutionary action. As I said at the beginning, I'm a young man. I was born into a post-civil rights America, and so my frame of reference for the changes that were wrought by the great leaders of the civil rights movement is necessarily limited. But to the extent that I can even begin to try to understand, I can say with complete confidence I would not be here without those sacrifices. Dr. King's unimaginable strength, and I mean unimaginable literally, like I can't imagine how he managed to wake up every day, 7 days a week, and fight that fight. His unimaginable strength, without it, I would not be standing here in Lee's Chapel, as an equal to every man, woman, boy, and girl in here today. For this sacrifice, I lack the words to express my gratitude. So I'll end simply and just say, thank you, Dr. King. Thank you.
At this time, we will have the introduction of our speaker by David Nussbaum, law class of 2014. And after that, we will immediately have none other than Ms. Donna Brazile, our keynote address for the evening. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this event and the other events throughout the week designed to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing an inspiring person who wears many hats and wears them all very well. Donna Brazile works tirelessly to strengthen our civil society and our nation in general. As a proud native of New Orleans, in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita, the Louisiana governor appointed Ms. Brazile to serve on the Louisiana Recovery Board to work for the rebuilding of the state and to advocate nationally for the Gulf's recovery. Additionally, Ms. Brazile currently serves on the board of the National Democratic Institute, the National Institute for Civil Discourse, the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, and the BlackAmericaWeb.com Relief Fund. Ms. Brazile strives to give young people a better tomorrow. She heads efforts to encourage young people to vote, to advocate for change, and to run for public office. And her dedication to politics began early. At age 9, she worked to elect a city council candidate who promised to build a playground in her neighborhood. Since that time, Ms. Brazile has worked on numerous political campaigns. She's worked on presidential campaigns from 1976 through 2000. And in 2000, she became the first African American to manage a presidential campaign when she managed Vice President Gore's campaign. In her role as a lecturer since 2000, Ms. Brazile has spoken at over 125 colleges and universities across the country on presentation topics of modern-day race relations, civility in politics, and diversity in politics. Ms. Brazile is an accomplished author, television on-air contributor, and actress. She is the author of the best-selling memoir, Cooking with Grease, Stirring the Pots in American Politics. Ms. Brazile is a syndicated newspaper columnist for Universal UClick, as well as a columnist for Miss Magazine and O, the Oprah magazine. She regularly appears on CNN and ABC, especially ABC's This Week, as an analyst. She is also an accomplished actress, and this is no surprise given that her passion is acting. She's my favorite character on The Good Wife right now. The world has taken notice of her achievements. She has received a number of accolades. O, the Oprah magazine, chose Ms. Brazile as one of its 20 remarkable visionaries. The Washingtonian magazine named her among the 100 most powerful women. Essence magazine recognized her as one of the top 50 women in America, and she received the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's highest award for political achievement. Ms. Brazile has received honorary doctorate degrees from LSU, North Carolina A&T, Grambling College, Northeastern Illinois University, and Xavier University of Louisiana. Ms. Brazile is an adjunct professor at Georgetown University and is also the founder and managing director of Brazile Associates LLC, a general consulting, grassroots advocacy, and training firm based in our nation's capital. Please join me in welcoming to WNL this evening our amazing keynote speaker, Donna Brazile.
Yeah, well, as you all know, it's winter time, and so I have to keep my voice. Although President Obama will deliver his 6th State of the Union, I have to be on television that night to give a rebuttal. I'm going to give a pre-buttal as well tomorrow, so don't worry, I haven't been singing all day, but my voice is hoarse because I've been using it all week to talk about Martin Luther King, his amazing legacy. Dr. King was my hero. I was too young to have known and met Dr. King. But I can only imagine at the time what it would have been like had I been allowed to march with Dr. King. You see, I was 8 years old when Dr. King was taken from us. 8 years old. And I'll never forget that day as long as I live. Because my grandmother, who, of course, she was the steward of the house. My working parents, my mom and my dad, they were at work. When we got home from school, my grandmother rushed us into the house. It was a rainy day, and so we thought maybe she had the beans on early and we could get a big old pot of red beans and rice with some fried chicken on the side and potato salad and all of the other great things we eat in Louisiana. But this wasn't a meal call. It was an urgent call. The kind of call that when you hear it, you stop what you're doing and you look up at your grandmother and you immediately begin to listen. My grandmother Frances was from Mississippi. She was born in 1887. She was a free woman. Her parents were not. But she was a forgiving woman, a loving woman. And when she called us in order of our birth, Cheryl, Sheila, Donna, Tater, Chet, Lisa, Dimitri, Kevin, and Ziola, we immediately sat down. She told us that Dr. King had been shot. And being a little girl, being kids, we didn't know what that meant. We said, who would do such a thing? Why? For us, growing up in the segregated Deep South, at a time when there were still signs up. I saw some of those signs as a little girl, didn't understand them. Besides, when we went to the zoo when we were kids, my mother didn't tell us to pay attention to the species, she said the recipes, so we didn't bother with blacks or colored only or white. We were listening to my mother. But Grandma sat us down. She told us we had to pray. Now, being little Catholic kids, our prayers were a little bit longer than the Baptists, because you know the Baptists know how to start low, go slow, rise high, strike fire, and sit down. Catholics, we have to meditate, find the right scripture, make sure we call upon the angels and the saints, light our candles. We had an altar at our house, like Catholics in New Orleans. I'm not going to go into that. That's another conversation. But she said we had to pray. And when Grandma told us we had to pray, we absolutely did. We started with the Lord's Prayer because, David, that's the only prayer that we could start with. And remember what the Lord's Prayer says. It talks about forgiveness. And so on that night, a night of mourning, a night that we did not even understand, but we grieved, we prayed. But my grandmother also told us that we had to forgive whoever shot Dr. King. And first thing I did was open my big mouth. Back then I had a big mouth. It's not as big as it used to be. I actually know how to shut up. My mom used to say, shut up, Donna. Nope, shut up. Yeah, she would have been proud to know that I worked for 2 TV networks because I like to talk. But I asked my grandmother, I said, why? Why would anyone do this? Why would they take Dr. King from us? That evening, as the news began to finally hit home, my parents came home and they ultimately told us that he had died from his wounds. And like my grandmother, my mom and my dad, 2 working poor parents, a maid and a janitor, they called us in their room. And again, we had to pray, not for just Dr. King and his family, but also his enemies. That is how I grew up. That is why I'm here today, because I learned as a little girl that reconciliation, forgiveness, those are humble values that we should all possess. Yes, like most kids, I was torn up by the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. It was painful. And the pain didn't just last for a day, the pain seemed to have lasted for a long time. Even when Ebony magazine came out with the front cover with Coretta Scott King, who I had an opportunity to work for, thank the Lord. She's the one who hired me to work on the campaign to make King's birthday a holiday. I thank God for her every day. She hired a young kid out of Louisiana. Some people laugh when they hired me because they say, well, what does she know? She's so young. But I reminded all of them that they were once young, including Dr. King when he started the Montgomery bus boycott after Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. But my parents, they taught us that love conquers hate. They told us to put that in there in our hearts. And that is my heart. And that's why I'm here. And it is a great honor to return to this prestigious campus in this historic region of our country. So much history, so many history makers. This is not my first visit, my second. I came for the mock convention. I know I look the same. David, had you seen me, Anton, and Mr. Stroud, Mr. Hernandez Stroud, and Miss Candace, you all would have thought I was still a spring chicken back then, almost a decade ago. So I know your history. I know all about Washington and Lee. I've also visited the Virginia Military Institute. My father was a veteran, my grandfathers, my uncles. I am called by their service to always honor men and women in uniform, and I'm grateful for their service. It is indeed an honor to be back on this campus and to see all of you. There are so many more black faces today. And I'm sure there are a lot more, but tonight, as you all know, the Grammys. Hey, I don't want to compete with Jay-Z. But I can tell you one thing, last week, I got a kiss on this cheek, and I won't forget, because I wipe my face every day, and I wipe right around. That was from Sir Paul McCartney. Beatlemania, I got that too. Oh, on this cheek here, you might think that I just got a one kiss. Oh no, Smokey Robinson. It was Michelle Obama's birthday party, but I treated it as if it was mine. I got in more dances than Barack Obama, okay? And when he came up to me, I tried to show him a dance, but I remember the last time I danced with him, I tore my meniscus, so I took the backslide. No, Mr. President, you might have health care, but that Obamacare did not cover all of that ailment. Yes, indeed. But I'm pleased to be here to honor the birthday and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King would have turned 85 this month had an assassin bullet not taken him away from us in 1968. He was 39. But his memory lives on in our hearts, in our mind, our spirits, because Dr. King was a Christian who preached the gospel. He understood what he was doing. He understood fellowship and reconciliation and forgiveness. And had he lived, Dr. King would have urged us to put aside all of the talk of division, of hate, bullying, and violence. He would have urged us to come together to find common ground, to hear the call to service, to serve our neighbor, to serve one another, to stand up to injustice whenever we see it, and speak out against the senseless violence in our society. It is senseless. Senseless. I mean, I'm driving my car yesterday, trying to make my errands. I'm just getting back from Corpus Christi, Texas. By the way, it was cold there too. And I'm just trying to do the usual, the bank, the post office, the cleaners, you know, get a couple of things from Eastern Market. I wanted to relax a little bit because I knew I was working this Sunday, and I'm gonna work next Sunday. Go to church, work, whatever, I'll do it. But at 11:15 yesterday, WTOP, breaking news. There was a shooting at the mall. And you know, I'm like, okay. Don't seem like I'll be going to Macy's today. I didn't know what mall. I immediately started praying. I said, Lord, every other day there's a senseless shooting. At a school, at a mall, at the theaters. You know, the night when I heard that man shot somebody was just texting home to his family to let him know that he would be on his way soon. When I went to see 12 Years a Slave about 2 weeks ago, I wanted to see the movie because, you know, when the Oscars come around, those of us who like to act like to know what other actresses and actors are doing. Thank you, baby. I've been on 3 shows, and I have House of Cards, and I'm applying for as many as I can, as long as I can. Thank you, baby. And if you want a cameo with me. But, I mean, the violence, it's just senseless. Now, I'm all for the Second Amendment. Dr. King would not have sat here and started quibbling over this amendment, that amendment. He would have expanded the Constitution for all people, for all reasons. But the violence, watching 12 Years a Slave, and I wanted so bad to pull out my phone. You know, Al Gore invented all of these little texting things and the internet. And I wanted to just text somebody to just let them know that, why did you tell me to come right now? This is uncomfortable, watching people get whipped. I don't need this right now. I should have went to see Blue Jasmine, some love story, her, whatever, her. I want to go see her. Go see him, go see whatever, why 12? And something told me, just something in my spirit said, put your phone back in your purse and just go through it. When I got on CNN the next day, when preparing for my topics, I do political, I do culture, I want to do sports, but they haven't reached that moment when they call me for sports. They should. I know what the score is. And anytime men move balls, I can move mountains, so why not? So, here I am, watching on TV and listening to more violence. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to find ways to live Dr. King's dream, to talk about his legacy, but believe that we are the inheritors of that legacy, and we have to keep the spirit alive. We got to teach our children that they can't turn to violence when they're upset, mad. We got to give them the help they need, be it counseling, if they need it. If they need time to talk, we need to find the time to talk to them. We can't push them aside. And I'm going to say something, this is controversial. Perhaps not as controversial as some of the things you said, young man. You're going to be a good lawyer, I'm going to look you up. But I'm going to say it. Too many of our kids are spending time alone in the basement or up in their room, not talking to you or me. They're disconnected from us. They don't feel touched. I mean, even with 9 kids, I felt touched. My mama didn't always hug us. Sometimes she pushed us. She had to push 9 of us. Pushed us away from the table, too. We loved her cooking. But the truth is that we have to embrace our kids. We have to love them. I think that's one thing King Week, month, season should stand for, is loving our children, taking care of them, showing them a way out of no way, giving them hope. Don't let them stand on the outskirts of hope and expect them to come within the circle of love, because we pushed them out. We got to bring them in. That's why I'm a part-time college professor. That's why since the beginning of this month, I've talked to 200 student leaders from all over the country. I've been to Columbus State, Ohio State. I've been to Minneapolis, down to Texas A&M. I'm going to hit at least 15, 20 campuses before the end of March, and I love it every day. Because I tell my students at Georgetown, I say, this is your day. I give you 1 day out of my 7. Now, I can't give you 2, but I'll give you 1. And this is the day that I love the most, because I get to touch them, talk to them, hear them, console them, love them. They leave their parents and, yeah, they get thrust into the world and not know where to go. Dr. King would have found a place on a campus for them so they can talk, to make them feel like they're somebody, they're going somewhere, they're going to do something that will make this world a better place. We got to live as if King were still alive and looking at us, looking at us. He might not have called you to march, young man, but he would have called you to stand up and speak out against injustice. He would have demanded and challenged us to use our voice. Dr. King believed that if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, Dr. King wanted us to keep moving forward. He never would have been stuck in the moment. He never would have spent his day and night on cable television. Yeah, I'm about to talk about what I do. He never would have spent his time arguing with people on things that really don't matter. He would have known the substance versus the superficial because Dr. King did not major in the minors. Today, you think our biggest challenge in this country, with all of its great wealth, and we have great wealth in this country, and we don't measure wealth simply by how much money you have in the bank or how much money you're earning, but we measure wealth by our values, what we give back, what we build up, what we share. That's how you measure wealth. Dr. King would have called us exceedingly rich by the standards that he grew up. Rich. I have people now who cry broke when they have a car and a job and a roof over their head. No, you don't have the riches, all of the things that you want, but look what you have and make the best out of it. Some of us are still holding on to Jiffy cornbread after Thanksgiving. Hello, breaking news. Give that to the food pantry. Along with those cans of black-eyed peas that you did not open on New Year's Day. Dr. King would have challenged us to move forward. Dr. King believed that hate is too great of a burden to bear, and let us not seek, he said, to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the bitterness and hatred. If you really want to get to know Dr. King, read his sermons. You'll be inspired by them. Read his words. He left so many for us to ponder. Read about his dream and just remember that that dream is still a work in progress. We've come a long way, but we still have some ways to go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Dr. King. I'm going to take your questions, comments, recipe, Candace, and then I'll sit down. But the theme today is finding a voice in a whisper. Martin Luther King speaks to our generation. And I've heard it whispered that this generation, your generation, has no voice and there's no leader. And I say, wrong, that's not true. But if we study the life and legacy of Dr. King, we'll realize that there is a voice and it's whispering in our ear, in our soul, and there is a leader, or rather, there are many leaders. Each of us, each of you is a leader. A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, as Dr. King once said, but a molder of consensus. To mold consensus, you must find your voice. Too often, we as students sit passively in the classroom. We're distracted from learning and thus diverted from life itself. We accept pronouncements passively, without analysis. But no human being has such access to truth. We do not speak up or answer a question for fear of being wrong or not having the right answer. My friends, in life, there's only one right answer. The strength to act for justice, whatever the question. We may test it with one another. Will this help another human being, materially or spiritually? Will it help someone find employment and dignity? Is it an honest act? Do I speak with integrity and civility? Have I, in the fierce urgency of now, seized the moment to increase acts of goodness and kindness to civilize the world just a little more? This is the voice in the whisper. That is the voice that not only whispers today, but echoes to this day. It is still a small voice in the whirlwind that declares that we must dedicate our lives. As Bobby Kennedy declared, that Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice and do justice between fellow human beings. We must make the effort, again I quote Bobby Kennedy, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace violence with compassion and love. We can do well in this country, end of quote. Find your voice in a whisper. For the ultimate measure, Dr. King said, of a person is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Where he stands or where she stands at times of challenge and controversy. Find your voice in a whirlwind or a vortex. Now I mention this because recently we've experienced what the meteorologists, I love the weather people, by the way. I love them. They never lose their job when they're wrong. That's why I love them. They're the only ones with full employment. Y'all know that? Full employment, they can predict the worst weather and nothing happens. You go out and get your refrigerator filled with milk and eggs and cheese and butter and bread and nothing happens. You get a little bit bigger, but their salaries go on. But they call it, as you all know, the Arctic vortex. In case you don't know, a vortex is a whirling mass of air. We have to distinguish between the vortex of nature and the whirling mass of air from the media noise machine. Although, since a high pressure system pushed the cold air south, maybe the media's spin out of the control cycle has something to do with it. Let's face it though, life can seem at times to be like a vortex, a whirlwind. It used to be that politics was like the weather. Everybody talked about it, but nobody could do anything about it. Now the weather is like politics. If we have the will, if we come together as a nation, we can make changes, we can create hope, we can stir goodness throughout the land, and we can still the turbulence, political or atmospherics, and generate an environment where goodness and kindness thrive. In celebrating Martin Luther King Day, week, season, that is to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King, we must remember that he lived in turbulent times and was at the center of the vortex of civil rights and the fight for economic equality and opportunity for all people. And we must remember that we're at what I call the midway point between the 50th anniversary on the historic March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom and the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. These are legacies of Dr. King, but not just Dr. King. These are legacies that we have to remember and celebrate. But more importantly, these are legacies that we must act upon. So I'll quote Dr. King again, because the truth is I could stand up here and share with you the thoughts and some of those wonderful, inspiring words and sermons of Dr. King for half the night and probably through the next night. But I would deprive you of two of the greatest joys of being a student of research and analysis. These are tools of critical thinking. That is a legacy Dr. King would be proud of, that those who follow in his footsteps, that those who fight as he did for jobs and freedom, not do so blindly, but rather that we go forward with questions, with engagement, with an open mind, and with the awareness that the absolute truth reside only with God. We must be humble, resolute, but humble. And if we are resolute, if we are humble, we will hear that call to serve. Dr. King said, I want to do something significant. He said, I want to find my voice in the whisper of time. And that is one of Dr. King's essential messages. As he said, and I quote, not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. Service, my friends, comes in many forms, and Dr. King said, and I quote, no work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. What matters is our commitment to the details and dedication to the cause, or in college, to the course. Do not disparage any task, for there is a time and place for everything, and to do what you must do, you have to start from where you are. I think Dr. King would want us to not only give voice to the celebration of his life, but Dr. King would want us to recognize our own power to help transform the world. And there's only one place to find that power at times, and that is by using your voice, even in a whisper. Whisper courage to your neighbor. Whisper courage to your coworkers, your colleagues, your friends. Whisper that courage, and don't be shy. If you cannot do that, then how can you speak truth to power? Hope and change. They have become bywords, but they were very real for Martin Luther King Jr. Hope and change. They were the stuff of faith and of courage. Change is always turbulent in the midst of the world when it's hard to see the transformation. But yet America has been transformed. Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where I trace my maternal ancestors, on my paternal, my father's side is North Carolina, so I got a little bit of y'all in my blood. What the hell, right? But here in Virginia, you elected the first black governor since Reconstruction, Douglas Wilder. Think about America itself. 2 blacks have served as Secretary of State of the United States, representing the United States of America throughout the world. The Attorney General is black. Dr. King would have been happy knowing that had he arrived in jail, Eric Holder would have gotten him out. 3 women are concurrently Supreme Court justices. One of them, the first Hispanic. A woman has served as Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington. 20 women in the United States Senate. Dr. King loves sports, black head coaches, winning Super Bowls. Black quarterbacks are no longer controversial. They're now the standard. Dr. King was a big fan of Star Trek, considered the advances in the media, and I'm not just talking about Oprah. And of course, the biggest transformation, the first black president, Barack Obama. And still, we're in the midst of transformation, of becoming a more perfect union. More transformation. More transformation. Back in 1983, when I was just a 23-year-old kid, finishing up my first big assignment on a national stage, helping to make Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday, I watched as President Ronald Reagan signed the legislation to commemorate this day. And the next day, his wife, Coretta Scott King, held a conference call to discuss what do we do now. I know that because I helped organize the call. I have all the little notes. That's one thing about being a good Catholic. You got that penmanship down. The nuns made sure of it. Mrs. King wanted Martin Luther King Day to be a national day of unity, a day of service. But more than that, a day when we begin to serve. A day when we begin to live in what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now. So how do we proceed? So let me give you some ideas before I close and take your questions, comments, or recipes. How do we begin to transform America, to keep America changing, transforming? How do we continue to rebuild this country, reclaim a future where every child can be born with a healthy start as well as a head start in life, regardless of zip code? We must start first with our faith. Faith, as Dr. King described it, is, and I quote, taking the first step even when you can't see the whole staircase. We must have the faith that transforms the whirlwind of despair into, as Dr. King said, a warm and reviving breeze of hope. We must etch this in our hearts. Fear, Dr. King said, knocked at the door, but faith answered. We must have dreams, for no person has the right to reign on our dreams. We must have education. Studies have shown that early childhood education is a big factor, maybe the biggest in closing the achievement gap between children who come from poor or lower middle class homes and children of the well-to-do. We must be mindful of the future, and the future belongs to the educated. Indeed, nothing in the world, Dr. King said, is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Education is more than an accumulation of facts. It is a development of character, moral character, and a training of the mind. Intelligence plus character, Dr. King believed, is the true goal of education. Dr. King found his voice only after years of study, of practice, of trial and tribulation, of errors. One must learn to be a doctor, a physicist, a journalist, a lawyer, and one must learn to also be a leader. And you are the leaders of this generation if you educate yourselves to be such. But you must start now, not at the top. Start right where you are. I didn't wait until I was 18. I found my calling at a very, very young age. 8 years old is a pretty young age to start, Candace. But as you can tell, 7 presidential campaigns later, 58 congressional, 19 state and local campaigns. I've worked in 49 states. One more, I'm going to become Miss USA without the bikini. But I knew I had to work hard, and I knew in order to lead, I had to not only obtain the education, but to work with those who would teach me and train me. So at 85, Dr. King, had he lived, would not have rested on all of his great accomplishments, including winning the Nobel Peace Prize 50 years ago this year. But Dr. King would have sought and found ways to keep transforming the world around him. I must say, Dr. King would not have been satisfied with the number of homeless veterans growing. They've served their country in war, they come home and can't find work, they've lost everything. And now they're sleeping in our parks, sleeping in tunnels, sleeping on the subway. And we walk past them, thinking that that's just some bum, when that's a man or a woman trying to find their way back home. And we turn away from them when we should be embracing them, helping them get back on their feet. So I'll leave you with a challenge, because that is Dr. King's legacy to me. To always leave your audience with a challenge and a pledge to meet them at a later date and compare notes. So I'm 54, how old are you? 22. Pretty young by my standards. 32 years, I'll meet up with you. I'll be 86. Don't worry, Tina Turner looks good at 75. I just want to look as good. But leave you with a challenge. And that is, and it may take a lifetime, but find something you believe in. Find your passion and go out and do it. I knew I wanted to serve. When I started the first voter registration campaign at 8 years old, I knew that that was the beginning. I couldn't wait to go door to door. Ms. Ethel, are you registered to vote? Mr. Joy, you registered to vote? Ms. Mary, you registered to vote? Ms. Hermione, you registered to vote? Ms. Lodgine, you ready? I asked everybody. So when I got my first assignment on a presidential campaign, you know what my assignment was? Voter registration. I'm like, wow, I'm gonna do good at this. I started this when I was 8 years old. And 10 million voters later, Reverend Jackson never became president of the United States, but he laid the foundation for someone else to become president of the United States. I never gave up. I never grew weary. After Florida, hanging chads, swinging chads, my favorite, the pregnant chad. Although I didn't want to see a pregnant chad. Knowing what I know, I did not want to see that. But I didn't give up after the Gore campaign. I didn't go home. I didn't cry. Of course I was upset. I didn't want the Supreme Court to stop the count. I wanted the vote count to continue. I wanted every vote to count. Every vote should count. Voting is the lifeblood of our democracy. I just went back out there and continued what I know best. Voter registration. President Obama said, "You want to be chair of the Democratic Party?" I said, "Oh, no." Tim Kaine became chair. When Tim Kaine, your senator, decided to step down and run for Senate, I was interim chair. I said, 6 weeks. It's all. I don't want to be chair of the party. Why? I don't want to be chair of the party. I like to do things at night that chairs of the party don't like to do. I like to be home and cook, be with my friends, hang out. Chair of the party got to work 24/7. Debbie Wasserman Schultz became the chair of the party. But they said, "What do you want to do, Donna?" I said, "Voter registration." 54. 54. Still doing voter registration. 46 years, still doing voter registration. And I'm not finished. I'm going to live long enough to see a woman in the White House. And of course, I'm going to live long enough to see many more serve in the White House. You know, our theme, A Voice is a Whisper. My challenge is for this generation to find a song that moves you. Find a song that makes you want to go out and raise your voice. Back 50 years ago in 1963, Sam Cooke came out with a song, "A Change Is Gonna Come." It's a haunting song, one that crosses boundaries. Go look the song up on YouTube. Al Gore invented that too. Listen to it. But here's one verse, and I can't sing. I know the words to lift every voice and sing, but I was not coming to the microphone. If the sister would have lost her voice, I would have hummed it, but I never would have sang it. But I'll tell you these words, and there's a verse, "There were times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will." And I want you to consider that that change began to occur when young people were willing to march and to sacrifice. 3 young men, 2 Jewish boys and a black boy, were murdered in Philadelphia, Mississippi in the summer of 1964. They were doing voter registration. All they wanted was people to register. It was Freedom Summer. But I know a change gonna come. And 50 years ago this month, 4 young men, you know I had to get Paul McCartney back in there again. 4 young men from Liverpool, England, invaded America and changed the way we think about music, about love, and about each other. Their songs grew as they grew and reflected the changes Sam Cooke sung about and Martin Luther King spoke about. Think about songs like "All You Need Is Love" and "Give Peace a Chance." Sir Paul McCartney wrote "Blackbird" because he was inspired by the Black freedom movement. And I quote, "You were only waiting for this moment to arise." That's why when I saw Paul McCartney, now I saw Beyonce, I saw a bunch of people, but I had to go over and thank him because I remembered that song. "Blackbird, you were only waiting for this moment to arise." Before he kissed me, I said, "You know you made history." He said, "Indeed we did," and that's when I got my kiss. I looked at his young wife and said, "Please don't stop this." throughout their tours in the United States, the Beatles. I wanted to bring this little bit of history in, because during the height of Beatlemania, they had a rider in their tour contract, Mr. Lawyers, that stated, and I quote, "Artists will not be required to perform before a segregated audience." Did y'all know that? They had a rider that they would not perform before a segregated audience. And John Lennon said they'd sooner lose their appearance money before they would sit in a segregated audience and perform before one. Can you imagine challenging some of today's artists with some of the loudest voices, the biggest names, to give up their multi-million-dollar performance fees for something that will help save lives, something that will help transform the world and the country? See, I'm not challenging young people to write songs that shake the souls or compose a speech that raises the listeners to the mountaintop. But I'm challenging you to find within yourself the song that changes you. Make the words your own. Let them inspire you as you struggle forward to become a leader. This little light of mine, that was my song. Remember, Dr. King said, every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions and passionate concerns of dedicated individuals. Remember, Dr. King said, all life is interrelated. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And when you discover what you will be in your life, set out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do it. Remember, Dr. King was a prophetic man of vision. He found his song and heard the call and put his voice to work on behalf of the poor, the downtrodden. He whispered words of encouragement, and he believed that love would conquer all. He died early, but his life and legacy lives on with us. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again for the introduction. Thank you. All right, I've gotten the Temptations and the Supremes behind me. Anybody want to hear a symphony? We take questions, we take comments, we take recipes, we take love, any warmth you may give us. There's a microphone right up here. Is one of my come on, young lady, lead. Thank you. Would you please pass the microphone on? Oh, there's one right there, young man, thank you. All right, and you'll take care of this side of the pews of the aisle. Thank you all. Yes, sir.
I think I speak for everyone. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
If Dr. King were here live and speaking, and you were in the audience, and he turned to you, what question would you most like to ask him?
Donna, what are you doing for the least of these? Donna, what are you doing to make this a better world? Donna, you were born to two working poor parents. Because of my work, you got a head start in life. You were able to start school at the age of 4 years old. You didn't even know your last name, but you went to school and you were immunized and you got a free lunch every day. So what are you doing to help the least of these, to give back? And I would tell Dr. King, I don't believe that as much as I want my government to do everything, my government can't do everything. We got to go back to the old ways, Dr. King. We got to make sure that neighbor is looking after neighbor. When my neighbor is hungry, I'm hungry. My neighbor gets a cold, I have the flu. Dr. King, I am my brother's keeper and my sister's keeper. I would tell Dr. King that I was doing my very best to keep the New Orleans Food Bank filled with precious and nutritious goods that I was giving back to my church. I'm proud of the fact I got Pope Francis now. Soon, St. John Paul. Catholic girls, we live long enough, we might get there. I still have hope. But I would listen to Dr. King's call. You see, I cannot rest that night knowing what I know. There are days when I would, like some of my friends that leave politics, they go in lobby, they make $1 zillion. I work 4 part-time jobs and I'm happy. Because I want to give back. I want to keep finding time to give back, be it on college campuses, organizing food bank drives in my hometown, making sure my own nieces and nephews have the education, the resources to go to school, even kids I don't know. I am called to serve. I am called to give back. Trust me, I know, because I live in D.C. where the mighty, I got a bigger Rolodex than many people. Yet I've never used it to hurt anybody. Never used it to lobby against my own interests or the interests of the poor, the disadvantaged, women, minorities, and those who are suffering. So Dr. King would urge me to use my voice, my big mouth. I'm not on CNN and ABC because I'm the prettiest girl in the room, although I've seen some and I'm not that bad. I'm on because I do my homework and because I'm authentic. I try to be who I am. I can't be who I'm not. I don't know all of the answers. Sometimes I get questions on CNN and I want to roll my eyes like, whoa. I don't know how we get out of Iraq without the Sunnis and the Shias fighting. But I do believe we have to give them a chance to establish peace and to come together and to run their own country. And then I said, oh Lord, I mean, we got a lot of work to do. Peace, justice, equality. He left us with those legacies, but he also left us a blueprint. Dr. King didn't just leave us alone. He left us with words that should encourage us and acts of kindness and goodness that we should follow in our own lives. If we do that, we will be better off. If we don't, then I think we're going to continue to go through this vortex, this whirlwind of despair where people feel disconnected, don't feel that they're part of anything. And for a poor kid who grew up on the second side of the train tracks, the first side of the tracks, that was separated the black people from the white people, segregation. That was segregation, separation, okay? The second set separated the poor blacks from the middle class blacks. Ooh, we even had those kind of little isms. And we also had the paper bag test. I didn't pass it, I'm a little dark. I got a little rich, creamy gumbo in me. It's the other side of dark chocolate when you don't want to see it, that's what I have in me. Nutmeg, cinnamon don't have nothing on me because I got it all blended in. But we were so poor that we were right up against the levees, which meant every time there was a storm, we had waterfront property. And we knew how poor, we were poor. But that never kept me from looking for good things. Dr. King wanted us to find the good and praise it. To praise it. Every day I found something good about life to go out and praise. That's why my mother kept saying, shut up, Donna. Even if I could solve a New York Times puzzle, which I did every time I got it on a Sunday when the people threw it down on the bus stop, I picked it up and went home and did the puzzle. I fixed the puzzle. Shut up, Donna. Well, I fixed, shut up, Donna. That was my mother's mantra. She had to shut me up because she knew I was going to talk. I kept talking. Go to the library, get 4 books. My mother was John Ashcroft for her day. She used to ban certain books in the house. And I'm not talking about pornography. Okay, my mother just said, you cannot read that. Why? That is not what I want you to read. And then I used to have to sneak home and read it, just to find out. And then after I read it, I would say, ooh, can't talk about it. But Dr. King I think Dr. King would be pressing us on education. Dr. King would be pressing us on so many young people, especially young black males in prison. Some people now serving 10 years for 2 ounces of marijuana, and now marijuana is legal in Colorado and Washington states. 2 states, by the way, that are sending their teams to the Super Bowl, but I ain't saying nothing. But Dr. King would have pressed us on all of these issues. But the last thing he would urge us to do is to sit around and pontificate and vacillate and procrastinate. Dr. King would have wanted us to act and keep moving forward. That's what Dr. King would ask us to do. Yes, question over here, to my right, to my left. Yes, I know y'all want to see the Grammys. I asked Candace, mind the time, because I know the Grammys. I know y'all want to hear about Jay-Z. Yes, hi.
You brought up CNN and ABC, and I'm sure you're a fan.
Thank you.
Anytime you're behind the desk,
Thank you.
watch. So I have a question, because it seems like you're on there because you're knowledgeable, and you will say what you think.
I try
So,
to.
and that's what I really appreciate. So are there moments where you're sitting there and someone says something or asks you something, and in your mind you're thinking, ooh, I really want to say this?
Well, the only time I am troubled, that's the word, troubled. I am very slow to anger. I'm very passionate. But I respect people I even disagree with because they have a point of view. And I actually listen to their point of view. During the period of time when the Tea Party became a very prominent force in American politics, I said, but I want to hear what they have to say. Don't shut them off. Don't cut them out. Don't tell them they have no reason to think the way they think or believe what they believe. They are Americans too. And I want to hear what they have to say. Now, the vitriol, I don't care for. I get my share of hate mail, okay, and I don't get it right all the time. I get fact-checked. But I like to hear the other side. Because maybe, just maybe, they're saying something that might be worthy of consideration. But I know they are worthy of respect because they're human beings. So I'm very good about that. I can listen to the Tea Party all day, all night. Not 14 hours as Ted Cruz and Rand Paul sometimes like to do it. But that's just me. I don't listen to anybody for 13, 14 hours. I'm sure Wendy Davis sounded well for 10, 12, 7, but I can't do that. But I like to listen to find the good. The only time I get stirred, and I mean stirred, is when people are critical, dismissive, or even, in my judgment, they use obscene language to describe poor people. I just can't stomach that. I knew too many poor people growing up. Too many people who struggle each and every day to put food on the table, to take care of their kids, who never wore the stylish clothes, had hand-me-downs, but yet they wanted their kids to be better off than themselves. I know them. I live with 2 of them. Try burying your mama when she's 52 and you're 27. When she comes home after working all week, Friday night, tired. My mama never used those words. She was tired. Well, my sisters encouraged her just to rest. She got up, she said, I still don't feel well. She went to Charity Hospital where she gave birth to all 9 of us, and the next day she was dead. Dead. Because she never had the means to get health care, to get an annual checkup, to see what was wrong, why she was having a hard time breathing. When you see those little commercials on the COPD on television, I'm not talking about them Viagra things, but the one about breathing, my mom needed that. And so when I hear people talk about poor people, lazy, and they just want government programs, I say, whoa, 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 hey, stop hating. Understand that poor people want what everybody else wants. They want to breathe. They want clean drinking water. They want clean air. They want a place to sleep. They want a job. And not just a job, they want a job with a living wage. I know someone who works from 3 to 10 and from 11 to 7. 2 minimum wage jobs. Her son said, "Mom, I found a job that pays $12 an hour. Maybe you can just work 1. I know because that's number 6. I'm number 3. My parents put 8 out of 9 of us through college. 1 did not finish high school or college. And she's the one working 2 jobs. And so that's the only time, because I just want to correct them before they wreck them. And I always, in the back of my mind, know that my sister Lisa, between ships, might be watching me. She might. And she might pick up that phone if I ignored that and call me and remind me. And the reason why Lisa is so important to me is because when I graduated from college with my diploma, looking all good, I had nothing but a job in D.C. but no money. And Lisa loaned me $150. That's how I got to D.C. to work on Kane's Holiday. And I'll tell you one thing else. When Katrina made landfall, all my sophisticated brothers and sisters with all of their degrees and all of their upness and dumpness and wumpness and Lisa was the only one with conventional and flood. She was the first person to be able to get back in her house and to rebuild and to elevate it. So I don't even condemn people who are not quote unquote educated. I know a lot of people without these degrees and certificates, but they got common sense. That comes from the book of Proverbs. So I try to have love in my heart for everybody, but you know, when they turn off the TV and they say clear, I sometimes say, you know, why did you do that? That was not nice. But I try to find the good in everybody. And I have found the good in everybody. Any last minute questions, comments? Right over here, we got 2 more. One here and this young lady in the red. Thank you, sir.
As a history teacher, I'd like to ask you a history question. Can you tell me 2 or 3, or maybe just one person who had the biggest influence on the thought development of Martin Luther King Jr.? Who influenced him?
Well, Dr. King was influenced by many. He was influenced by the Quakers. He belonged to the Fellowship of Reconciliation. He was influenced by his own father. Think about it. His daddy, Dr. King, Daddy King, was a big preacher. His grandfather, A.L. Williams, they influenced him during his day. But I would think more than anything, his reading of the Bible, his understanding of Scripture, Mahatma Gandhi, the whole principle of nonviolence that Dr. King carried on as a crusade. Remember, it was Dr. King who said, don't fight back with billy clubs. We fight back with the moral force of nonviolence. When his early assignment back in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks sat down on December 1st, 1955, all of the old preachers said, no, we'll leave it up to Dr. King, because Dr. King had the challenge of telling people who lived on the outskirts of town that they could no longer ride the bus into town to protest what had happened to Rosa Parks. They would boycott the Montgomery bus system. And he had the moral force of nonviolence that he had learned from Gandhi to maintain that campaign and ultimately win that campaign. That is how Dr. King came to us as a national figure, from leading that bus boycott. He could have went to Atlanta. He could have followed in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. They were preachers too. But he went to Montgomery, Alabama and started low, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And that's how he began his journey. And that's the Dr. King we should never forget, the Dr. King who was called, heard the call, and didn't say, wait, but said, why now? Why me? And he answered it. That's the Dr. King that we should remember as well. Yes, ma'am. You're the red.
I'm going to wait for a mic here.
Oh, okay. Your voice is not a whisper. All right.
You can probably tell it's not. First of all, I want to thank my young sorors, Tom Mager at WNL, who invited us tonight. I'm with the Royal Columbia chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority.
Thank you.
I'm just really so honored to be here. I tried to catch you at the Democratic National Convention. I was the delegate, and you had your tennis shoes, and you were running from one hotel to the next, so I couldn't catch you. But I just want
wanted to say, when you talked about community service, you talked about so many things that hit home for me, and I know my other four in the back is going to say something, but we were just in a meeting on Martin Luther King Day, that day of service. We all commit to something. That's one day of service. And you know, we have a hard time finding things to do because everybody wants to do something that day. The AKAs, everybody was doing something. What I wanted to do was find a way to keep giving other than that one day. And I would ask you, what do you recommend that we do? Because we cannot give back and we cannot continue to move forward if we're doing one day of service. 365 days and you're focused on one day, we really have to do better than that. And I would ask you, I know you're all over the place and you're really busy, what can we do? Not as just a sorority, but as a community, to continue to give back and make ways that will make a difference.
You know, I had dinner the other night with Mayor Rahm Emanuel of Chicago. Rahm and I go back to the Mondale campaign, so whenever he's in Washington, D.C., we often break a little bread. Well, we do a lot more. This is a church, and so Jesus' first miracle was wine, so we do that too. But there's no question that the day of service, we should launch the day of service for the year because Dr. King's birthday takes place at the beginning of the year in January, but we should continue doing something every month. Maybe this month you launch a food bank drive to help replenish and stock the local food bank. Maybe you do something around literacy. Rahm Emanuel decided that because of the achievement gap in Chicago between poor kids and better off kids, he decided that in poor neighborhoods, that in those local libraries, because libraries are very close to people's home where they live, he would have a teacher there every afternoon after school to help kids with their homework. And there's also something online for people who are going back to community colleges to try to retool themselves. So I think to find ways, whether it's helping people learn how to speak English. We have such a growing minority in this language minority in this country who are struggling to speak English. That's another way of giving back. I mean, helping veterans. Some of our veterans who are back, maybe they don't have, the means to find apprenticeships or internships. There are many ways to serve. We shouldn't limit it to a week, shouldn't limit it to a month, we shouldn't limit it to just Dr. King. We should do it in our lives all the time because that's the way Dr. King would want us to do it. I find ways, now the way I do it, I call it my charities. So I start off the year, I have 2 months of the year that I do education related charities because I have to give back. I want to make sure I help as many kids as possible get in colleges. So whatever fees or tuitions or whatever thing I give it back because that's the only way to flourish. That's the only way to keep King's dream alive of education for all people. I do the food bank because, yes, I have to tell you about this homeless guy, Steve, and I know a lot of them on Capitol Hill. I lived on Capitol Hill for 30 years. I was blessed to have a nice apartment, then I found a house. And Steve said, Miss Donna, you're not cooking the soup the way you used to. I said, what's wrong, Steve? Well, there's not a lot of meat anymore. I said, Steve, Mrs. Obama said we need more vegetables. He said, oh, no, you keep putting that sausage in there. I said, now look at this, I'm trying to get back my soup, and he wants me to keep the meat. All right, Steve, and I was just putting a little bit more okra to keep it thick, right? Thinking he needs some thickness. No, he wants his meat. And then my clothes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not going back. Some of us, I'm not talking about all of you, because I know some of you are on that New Year's resolution to lose 30 pounds, and you're already 23 pounds away from your goal. But some of you are not going to fit back in that size 6 dress. And men, some of you are not going to be able to wear those tight Levi jeans. So give it up. Share it. I didn't say a lot about politics during the last election, but when Katrina made landfall, and I found myself one of just 2 survivors in a big family. We trace our roots to 1832 in Louisiana. And every friend who called me and said they could help me, I accepted their help. Because we needed everything. They lost everything. And Governor Terry McAuliffe, now when I hear Governor Terry McAuliffe, there's a part of me that chuckles. Because Terry and I grew up together. I remember when he used to wrestle with alligators for money. He was a fundraiser. I was a field organizer. He was a fundraiser. I'm like, Terry, what are you doing? You're stupid. Oh, no, we're gonna raise $1,000. Okay. Terry called me, Donna, your family, what's wrong with your family? I said, they're all gone, Terry, I don't know where they're at. What do you need? I said, everything, Terry. So Terry said, get me a truck. So this is Terry. Terry went around McLean, Reston, all Northern Virginia. And so when the truck arrived in Louisiana, I'm like, what did Terry put in this truck? We had baby beds, we had clothes. To this day, my family has some of the best designer clothes because Terry McAuliffe went door to door and said, you're not gonna wear that size 6 dress. Give me your dress. Give me that round TV. You know you want a flat screen, I'll take the round TVs. Give me the table. You got any baby clothes? Terry filled the entire truck up. He felt it was his mission to help. And for no other reason, I know he's going to be a good governor, is because I saw what he did just for my family and so many others in the Gulf. So make it a day, a long lifetime commitment. I go to the Holocaust Museum once a year. I'm not Jewish, although Queen Esther was one of my favorite in the Bible. If I perish, I'm perished. I'm going to see the king. That's my girl. She was tough. But I go to the Holocaust Museum and we read out the names of those who died, those who perished. And I do that. And I lend my voice. For the same reasons those 2 Jewish boys I mentioned who died and murdered in the summer of 1964, they were there to march for my freedom, for me to be able to vote. We're all connected. The battered women's shelter. Now, I'm telling my secret, please, I'm gonna tell y'all a little secret. So you know I stay at the Holiday Inn, the Howard Johnson, the Hilton, and other places. Well, I learned something. I learned this from NPR, that for the battered shelters, we bring them little tubes of shampoo, conditioner, and lotion. Well, I get that. I take some from the hotel and I give it. Okay, I do it. Oh God, I didn't give my, see, Catholic, you know, we confess. But I find every month something to do to give back. I'm going home to Louisiana because I want, Baton Rouge is where I went to school. I give $500 every 6 months to 20 kids. And why? Because these are the kids who I think they have promise. They want to go to college, but their parents don't have the money for them to even apply, to figure it all out, but they're smart. All they're lacking is the money to fill out the application and to get it in the mail. $500. You know what I call it? One day on CNN. Or I'll make it up. But I give back. So you should never worry about the time. You just got to find in your heart to give back. The other night when we had that, we had 6 to 8 inches in D.C. Now, I'm not as strong as some of these young people on the stage, but you know what I have in my heart? And I'm so afraid of slipping in the snow because I've had one little knee incident. Y'all know I told y'all about that one. Don't be dancing with the president. If George Washington were around, I would have said, no, Mr. President, I am not dancing. After Obama, no. Because I bet he could shake a leg too. Just like when he was on the Delaware River, stirring up. That's George Washington, see? But we have to be mindful that everything we have to use it to the glory of God. Because that's where we get it from. That's our gift. And if we can't share it, then we're stopping God's love here on earth. God didn't bring us here to hate, but to love. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian woman. I've always been a Christian woman. I was a Christian woman even before I even knew what the word Christian meant. Because that's what was drilled in my little head as a little girl. God loves you, Donna. Really? Have you talked to him lately? My grandmother used to sit on the porch and act like she had a first eye-hand view of God, like she was talking when she cooked. You know, Jesus. Where? What you talking about? We have to believe that we can do better and that we can keep transforming this world. I'll leave you with just something my grandmother, because I love my grandmother. I talk about her all the time, and I'm sure we all have people in our family. I love my mom, and I lost my dad about 2 years ago this coming March. Great people, loved them. I am so grateful for what God gave me and what God gave others and given us our parents. We should always make every day Mother's Day, every day Father's Day, But grandmother there would be one that I would invent myself if I had time to make another holiday possible. But Grandma always left us at night with a prayer and scripture. And I still find strength in reading the Bible. But her favorite scripture was from the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you'll reap a harvest if you don't give up. A daughter of former slaves. She believed that. She lived until 1975. She believed that if we did good, all our lives we could reap a harvest if we didn't give up. And I still believe that is true. So thank you and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. I brought some water too. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Tammy Futrell, and I serve as the Associate Dean of Students here at Washington and Lee, and I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to each of you for being here this evening. I know that in the newspaper there was an error, and it said that the program started at 4:30 when on our website it did state 5:30, but thank you to those of you who were here at 4:30 and who sat and waited. I hope that I know that you were not disappointed. She's an amazing woman, and I want to say thank you for being here. Welcome home. You've been here many times, and we're glad to have you back. I just want to acknowledge a few people. I try not to do that because in November I celebrated another anniversary of my 29th birthday, and so I often forget when I start acknowledging, but I do want to take the opportunity to acknowledge the First Lady of Washington and Lee University, Kim Ruscio, who is here in the absence of our president, who is out on university travel, our Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, Sidney Evans, our Provost, Dr. Daniel Wuba, who is in his first year here. Thank you for being here, sir. Mimi Elrod, the mayor of Lexington, was just here, but she had to leave. And thank you to the community members. We do have the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated present here, the men of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and the ladies of, and I'm not going to be too controversial, but what I feel is the best sorority this side of heaven, the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for being here. I'm not Catholic, I'm Pentecostal, but I do have a confession to make. I'm gonna make a confession. So, people, I love people. I have been blessed to meet many people through this occasion, but there are a few that really make me starstruck, I guess. Julian Bond was one, Andrew Young was one, Donna Brazile is another. So when I was in Roanoke getting some stuff for this event last week, I got an email from my admin, and she said, Donna Brazile called. And I'm in the party store, and I look at my phone, and I said, Donna Brazile called. And so my mother said, you know, always be a lady. So I went over in the side aisle. I said, oh my God, Donna Brazile called. Let me pull myself together before I call her back. And so I did pull myself together. And then after I got off the phone with her, I called my parents, and my mom answered the phone, and I said, Mom, I just talked to Donna Brazile. And she said, no way, she's a big deal. And I said, yeah, she absolutely is. She said, me and your daddy watch all the time. Tell her I said hello. I said, okay, well, I'll make sure I do that. So I made several phone conversations, telephone calls after that to friends and sources. And by the fifth conversation, you were just Donna. I just spoke to Donna. By the last conversation, I just spoke to my best friend, Donna Brazile. So if you read something referencing you as my best friend, you have have been texting me. Yes, I missed your phone call earlier, and that was another phone call. I said, Mama, I missed Donna Brazile's phone call, but she told me God bless me. And it was like, that's all I needed for the day. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our students. You did an amazing job. Hernandez, I think you have another calling, but that's another story for a different day. But if you want to have an opportunity to meet Ms. Brazile, Donna, she will be in Evans Dining Hall for a reception and a book signing. We do have copies of her book. Thank you again for being here and for supporting our week. And I'm going to ask if we can get Chris Polk to please escort Ms. Brazile over to Evans. Please allow her to leave first so that we can get her situated before you all get over there. It's not far.
Oh, you want me to go now?
Yes, ma'am. we are BFFs. I'm following right down behind you. But we want to make sure you're over there and comfortable. All right. I'll be over there, Donna, don't worry. Thank you again, and please join us over in Evans Dining Hall. Thank you.